All right, Bill back here at High Tech. Stole Bart's camera from him again, but I just realized that I forgot to show you guys pounding in the cam bearings in the block. Well, cam bearings are in it. Cam's actually sitting down in there now, spinning like a dream. It's really greasy, hard to hold on to, but there's the cam. Anyways, just gonna show you here, measuring piston to wall clearance. It's gonna be kind of hard to do with one hand here. This particular piston, we're shooting for about 4.5 thousandths piston to wall. So I'm gonna take my micrometer and you measure about, on this particular piston, it's gonna be about halfway down the skirt of the piston. If you see, if I slide it down here, it doesn't even touch. And if I slide it up top here, it won't go across. That is built-in taper. So, anyways, I got my measurements there. We do have right at 4.5 thousandths piston to wall. And now I'm got my measurement. So we got our measurement on the main bearings. It was a perfect, what did I have written down here? Yeah, we had 2.5 thou on the mains and 2 thou on the rod bearings, and a perfect, what was it, 4.5 thousandths on piston to wall. So now we are ready to throw the crank in and go from there. All right, let's set the crankshaft in. It's like it's supposed to go in there. Alright, crank's laid in there. I'm gonna throw the main caps on it. I'm gonna show you guys, see if I can get this thing in the camera here. Thin film. We use, when I'm throwing these engines together, I use a Redline synthetic lubricant. I hate that black moly stuff. Anyone that's ever torn down an engine, if they've ever looked in the bottom of the oil pan, they've seen that black moly just sits there like sludge in the bottom of that oil pan and doesn't do anything any favors. This stuff pretty much dissolves in the oil and you can't even tell it's there. Great assembly lube. Ready now. Got one. Got two. 4 and 5. Probably edit that out. That's good. Anyways, so just like before, when we were measuring the mains, you don't just slam them home with the nuts, tap these in.
Okay, everybody, Bart at High Tech Motorsport. We're back here doing the 383. We're going to show you some block issues and things to look at here when you're assembling. Of course, we got Bill in the background doing his thing. Say hi, Bill. There's Bill. Today he's got a hat on, covers his bare spot. All right, so we're going to show you, what are you going to show today? What's going on?
Well, we got the mains torqued in this thing. I don't think I went over it yet, but it's 3 equal steps. You know, you get your final torque, so say 35, 55, 75 foot-pounds on your main caps. Get that all buttoned up, make sure the thing still spins nice, and if it does, we're ready to check the thrust on the crank, which is, you know, crankshaft end plate, back and forth. And on this one, so we'll pry it all the way one way, either way, it doesn't matter, and make sure we're at our 0 on our magnetic base dial indicator. So it's at 0, then we'll pry it the other way. Not crazy, just enough to move it. And 1, 2, that's 5 thou. So tolerance is 3 to 6 thousandths, and we're right there.
And what do you do if it doesn't work?
Well, if it's too tight, we get to take this crankshaft out again, and we can show them here. We can show them the thrust bearing. I don't know if you ever really got that. No. But the thrust bearing is in the rear cap, and it's just got a flange on each side that the crank will pull on. But if it's not right, if it's too tight, we pull the crank out and get a granite slate or a piece of glass, and we sand the face of the bearing with like 800, 600 grit sandpaper, and build ourselves up some tolerance. You know, you got to very carefully, you know, count your strokes and do each side, each half of the bearing the exact same amount. And if it's way too much, then you got to get a plus bearing, so something that's a little bit tighter.
All right. So let's look at something else that Bill did here. He put the frost plugs in, make sure they're nice and clean with the paint, and then you tap them in and use a little bit of RTV on them, slip them into place.
Yep, on them in at the driver. I put a little bit of black RTV silicone on there just because they're steel. If they were brass, I wouldn't worry about it so much. But the steel ones go in a little harder, so they get a little bit of sealant on them.
Now notice one other thing. Bill's he put paint on each one of the mains as he would torque them down so you don't forget it. So if somebody calls you in the middle, somebody's looking for more information about an engine or something like that.
Yep, you can always keep track, and you always remember if you got that thing final torqued by your mark.
Okay, so they make different kinds of lube for these things. These are ARPs.
Yep.
So what's the...
So the main studs, ARP Ultra Torque. It's just a good lube with some graphite and some other good stuff in there that gets rid of all the friction, so you get an accurate torque reading.
Because what you're actually doing is stretching the bolt. It's bolt stretch.
Correct.
And they just give you a number to go by. So, all right, so then we got all the pistons are laid out.
Yep, all the pistons are laid out. They've all been measured. I got all but the final number 8 cylinder rings filed.
Okay.
So, we gotta go over that real quick. Flip this thing back around.
Now, a lot of you guys will use, I call them pre-cut rings. They're just kind of stuffed together, and they're inexpensive when you do it that way.
Yep.
Everything we do here, and you should do it too, to make sure they're properly fitted to each hole. And there's different tolerances for different applications. So if you're doing turbos, supercharged, nitrous, the ring end gap will be a little bit bigger than naturally aspirated.
Yeah, you can kind of show them.
Oh, sure.
There's
your manly stuff right there. Top
every
rings,
ring set's going to be different. Every piston's going to be different. This is just general guidelines, minimum ring gaps on that chart.
Okay. So, I'm showing you what we're going to go to here.
Yep. So we're doing kind of a street strip application. So that's our bore size times 0.0045. That's 18 thousandths of an inch. That's minimum. So we're going to go an extra 2 thou on that to give ourselves a little breathing room for extreme heat.
Because we know our customers, that's all they do is they take their crap out and beat the crap out of it and then call us and tell us when something doesn't work. Or they crash the truck.
So we got our oil ring,
okay,
the 2 upper and lower oil support rails, I guess you'd call them, and then the actual support rail for the whole works. Those are 99% of the time, they're pre-gapped out of the box. I checked them, they're good, we got enough gap on those. We have our top ring and our second ring. You can always tell the top ring by the shiny side on it.
Can you see that shiny?
I don't know if you can see that or not.
Don't know.
I'll put them side by side.
Oh.
See, one's black, one's shiny. Shiny one's the top ring. Top ring's chromoly. Second ring's on this particular package is just ductile iron, I believe. So we'll grab the iron one because it's softer and easier.
Okay.
Biggest thing, fitting the gap on your rings. You want them to butt up square. When you get done, they should butt up just as nice as that one does. You don't want to come in at any sort of weird angle. And you always file this one particular side. Don't do, you know, file some off this side, then come back to this side. You just keep them all. You just always file off of one side. And I always do it with the ring up. This particular ring, you can tell the up side on the ring is the print. It's got a bevel on the bottom of it. The bevel on the second ring goes down, bevel on the top ring goes up. Most of you guys, if you're doing this at home, you'll probably have a rig like this. It's really long and tedious work, but you sit here and you crank and crank and crank and crank. Well, we're not going to do that today. So, put my ring in here, square it up against the little ledge here, just tighten it down a little bit.
Right there?
Yep, keeps it nice and straight.
Okay.
So I'll roll that back. I want to make sure I got 0 on my dial indicator so I can move this back and forth, and it just gives me a little bit of an idea where I'm at. So we'll make sure we're at 0 here, turn this thing on, and go down. It shouldn't touch. It just barely tickles. So I usually do it about 3 thousandths at a time. I know from doing the rest of the ring set here that these won't even go in the bore. They butt up tight and they won't even fit. So I'm gonna take about 10 thousandths off just to get it into the bore to start my measurements. Three thousandths, go another 3 thousandths. And another 3 thousandths. Alright. So now the tools that we use. We gotta have our ring squaring tool, our deburring stone, and a set of feeler gauges. So now that ground on that's got a real sharp, nasty edge on this thing here, and we got to get rid of that. So we'll just sand that off, and you kind of go through and just lightly round all the edges. You don't want to round them, but you just want to break any sharp edge that's going to scratch the cylinder wall and or get caught on the piston. Both ends, even the stock uncut end, it's razor sharp, so you just want to kind of knock that down a little bit. Nice and even. Double check, butt that back together. It's about as square as it could be. So we're on cylinder 8 here. Slide that in just enough to use the ring squaring tool. It pushes it down about 1 inch. Make sure that's nice and tight up against that. And we have 0 gap.
Okay, there you go. That's where the little spot is right there. You see it's got 0, there's no gap whatsoever.
Man, we gotta get to 20 thousandths.
Okay.
So, back to the grinder.
Pull it back out.
Very careful to make sure you're square. It's a lot harder to do on this one, you guys, but this is about $25, this is about $600, so you choose. It's touched off and you can kind of see, and double check, make sure you're square. And another 3 thousandths. 3 more. 3 more. Alright, so that should be about 12 to 15 thousandths. You always want to do this slow and steady, creep up on it. If you go too far, you're too far. You can't come back from that. But you can always go a little bit more. So I'm usually back and forth from block to the ring filer at least 3-4 times a ring to make sure that we're spot on. We're not getting our ring gaps all carried away. Carefully slide it in. Yeah, we don't want to get yelled at by YouTube for having music playing.
Yeah.
Right.
Bill usually sings, same as in the shower, but
yeah. a little bit different.
All right, so here we go. Let's take a look here.
We have some ring gap. It's about 10,000.
You see that ring gap right there? Put the little feeler gauge in there with the 10, will you?
Yeah, let me see if I can grab the light too.
That's a good idea. There we go. There, now you can see it. See the ring end gap there?
It's not just blinding everything.
Yeah, that's all right. That's good.
My feeler gauge ain't gonna fit. We're about halfway.
We're going to 20, right? Is that where we're going?
20,000.
So we're halfway there. So Bill's going to take another probably, what, 9 out of it to double check it?
Yeah, about 8.
And do the final. Every time you have to use that little kind of emery cloth board thing that...
yeah, it's a boride stone is what I use. Nice, you gotta make sure it's not sharp and deburred every time. Okay, so you zero it out every time.
Zero it out. There you go.
Just kiss it. We're good.
Touch it. Now he's going to go 3,000.
And we'll go another 3. Check it.
This is that tedious stuff, that attention to detail, along with everything being clean, an environment with triple lighting, no shadows, clean floors, stuff all laid out, your tools ready to go. If you go to a shop and they've got like dirt floors and a cow walking by, probably not where you want your motor done.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's get the light. We'll do another spot. Oh, now it's
So
close.
that's too tight. If it holds your feeler gauge up like that, you're close, but it's still a little too tight. So we're gonna take about another thou or 2 off of that.
See? That's 20,000. It barely fits, but the feeler gauge does not fall out, so it's a little bit too tight. And the goal is to get these rings where they're supposed to be gapped because they grow with heat.
Correct.
And you don't want to have them butt together because they'll snap the top of the piston
if they
off.
grow together with heat and they're sitting there butted up inside the bore, something's got to give, and it's going to be your ring land.
Yep. And then you've got all kinds of stuff going on that'll make you unhappy. If you get them too wide, then you're losing a bunch of slippery air that goes by. So you're going to zero it out again.
That was about 1 thou. We're just going to lightly graze it.
Okay.
Yeah, if your gap is too loose, you're going to get a lot of blow by. You're going to be kicking oil out of your valve cover breathers. You're going to be down in power, and it's going to smoke. Ring gap's pretty critical. You can make a lot of power with the correct ring gap and not make any with an improper ring gap.
Or you can snap the top off a piston.
Yeah.
It's always exciting to watch that. All right, so you put it back in again. Now he's going to use his feeler gauge with his light. See what we got. Oh, that's worse.
That's worse.
Well, you gotta do it from the top.
Too damn shiny.
There we go. Let's take it at an angle. There we go.
All right, so it's just got just a little drag on the feeler.
There you
So
go.
we'll call that finished.
Okay, that's number 8 cylinder. Only 1 ring.
The second ring.
Second ring.
Same thing with the top ring. The
Yep.
top ring's harder because it's chromoly.
So and there's also tool steel rings that we use in all of our turbo supercharged stuff, and they're even harder than that.
Yeah, it takes quite a bit to grind on those.
Yes, so we're going to let Bill do that, and then we're going to come back here in just a little bit when he gets done with that, because he's going to fit them on the pistons, show you how that's done with wrapping them on correctly so you don't snap them. Snapping them is bad.
Yeah, breaking them is bad. And
Bill.
there's definitely a correct orientation and how they sit on the pistons, so we'll go over all that too.
Okay, we'll go through all that. Not too long, and then we're going to put it up on YouTube and keep breaking this thing up for you guys so you can follow along and build a motor.
That's right.
Okay, we'll be back.